Alcatraz. The name alone sends a shiver down your spine. It was a fortress, carved into a desolate rock in the middle of San Francisco Bay. A concrete and steel cage surrounded by treacherous, freezing waters. This prison was designed to be escape-proof, a final stop for America's most notorious criminals. But in 1962, 3 men vanished from their cells, without a trace. This is the story of how they achieved the impossible. For 29 years, Alcatraz held a perfect record. No one had ever successfully escaped. Its location was its greatest defense. The island, known as the Rock, was over a mile from the mainland, through a channel of deadly currents and frigid temperatures that could induce hypothermia in minutes. Inside, a rigid routine was enforced by hardened guards. Head counts were conducted constantly, sometimes up to a dozen times a day. The cell blocks were a maze of reinforced concrete and steel bars. Escape wasn't just difficult, it was considered suicide. The prison's motto was simple: if you break the rules, you go to prison. If you break the prison's rules, you go to Alcatraz. It was the end of the line. Our story centers on 3 men, Frank Morris and brothers John and Clarence Anglin. Morris was the mastermind. Orphaned at 11, he'd spent a lifetime in and out of institutions. But behind the criminal record was a brilliant mind, reportedly with an IQ in the top 2% of the population. He was a seasoned escape artist. The Anglin brothers were career bank robbers, tough and resourceful. They had also attempted escapes from other prisons before. A 4th man, Alan West, was also part of the initial plan. They were not just common criminals. They were intelligent, patient, and dangerously determined. And from the moment they arrived on the Rock, they weren't just serving time. They were watching, planning, and waiting for the perfect moment to disappear. The plan was a work of genius, born from months of meticulous observation and quiet collaboration. It began with the prison's own weakness, the ventilation grills at the back of their cells. Over time, the salty, humid air had corroded the concrete around them. The men realized they could chip it away, but how? Their tools were improvised marvels. They fashioned a makeshift drill from a sharpened spoon handle and a stolen motor from a vacuum cleaner. Spoons, smuggled from the mess hall, were used to dig. To hide their progress, they crafted fake wall sections out of wet newspaper and paint. But the most ingenious part of the plan addressed the constant head counts over several months. They sculpted dummy heads from a homemade paper match of soap, toilet paper, and concrete dust. They even used real hair, secretly collected from the prison barbershop. At night, they'd place these lifelike heads in their beds, complete with blankets pulled up to the chin, fooling the guards on their rounds. While the guards saw sleeping inmates, the men were hard at work. Each night, they would slip through the holes they had carved, climbing into the dark, unguarded utility corridor that ran behind their cell. This narrow space became their secret workshop. Here, they gathered their supplies, including over 50 stolen raincoats. Their goal wasn't just to get out of the cells, it was to get off the island. They painstakingly stitched and glued the raincoats together, using heat from the prison's steam pipes to seal the seams, creating a makeshift inflatable raft and life vests. They even crafted wooden paddles. Every night was a race against time, a quiet, desperate effort conducted in near-total darkness, just feet away from patrolling guards. Alan West, however, ran into trouble. On the night of the escape, the cement he'd used to patch his wall had hardened, and he couldn't get his vent cover off in time. His partners had to leave him behind. On the night of June 11, 1962, the plan went into motion. Maurice and the Anglin brothers slipped out of their cells for the last time, leaving their dummy heads to cover for them. They squeezed through the vents, climbed up the utility corridor, and forced open a ventilation shaft on the roof. They were out. Standing on the prison roof, 30 feet above the ground, they slid down a pipe to the ground below. They ran across the yard in darkness, evading the searchlights, and made their way to the island's northeast shore, a blind spot for the guard towers. There, they inflated their raft and pushed off into the cold, black waters of the bay, disappearing into the fog. Back in the cell block, the guards passed by, counting the dummy heads, completely unaware that 3 of America's most wanted men were gone. It wasn't until the next morning's head count that the truth was discovered. A guard poked at one of the dummy heads, and it rolled onto the floor. The alarm blared across the island. The illusion was shattered. Panic set in. Alcatraz, the escape-proof fortress, had been breached. The authorities were hours behind, and one of the largest manhunts in American history was launched. The FBI, the Coast Guard, and local police scoured the bay and the surrounding land. They found pieces of a paddle and fragments of the raincoats washed up on a nearby island. A wallet containing names and addresses of the Anglin's contacts was also found, wrapped in plastic. But the men themselves, and their raft, were never officially seen again. The official conclusion from the FBI was that the men drowned in the treacherous currents of the bay. Their bodies, they claimed, were likely swept out to sea. But no credible remains were ever found. And so, the legend began. Did they make it? Over the years, tantalizing clues have surfaced. Family members of the Anglin brothers claim to have received postcards and even met them in secret years later. A photo emerged in the 1990s, allegedly showing the brothers in Brazil in 1975. Experts have debated its authenticity for years. The mystery of what happened that night has turned the escape into a modern myth. Did 3 men pull off the most audacious prison break in history, or did they simply trade a cage of steel for a watery grave? Their files remain open to this day. Some believe they died in the bay, their grand plan ending in a dark, cold failure. Others are convinced they survived, living out their lives in freedom under new identities. The truth remains buried, perhaps forever, in the cold waters of San Francisco Bay. What do you think happened to them? Did they escape for good? Let me know in the comments. And if you love stories that challenge the impossible, make sure to subscribe for more unbelievable true stories. Thanks for watching.